Jacob Smith, Spring Lake Seafood, Mashamoro Caviar. I mean, I'd rather eat lunch instead of talk to you. I'm not going to lie.
I'm with you. Thanks for inviting me. The food looks incredible.
These are the best podcasts to create when we get to have lunch at an incredible spot like Spring Lake Seafood, where they put an incredible spread in front of us. I can't wait to blow through this video so we can get into the shrimp, the lobster, the oysters, the clams, and Brad's specialty, the tuna pizza. And we'll steal some of this Mashamoro caviar while we're at it, because I hope I don't have to pay that bill. But anyway, it's almost springtime, or it is springtime, or it's almost springtime here at the Jersey Shore. Parades are coming up shortly, and that means spring fever, and people are going to start wanting to vacation, right? So when I decided to interview you down here in beautiful Spring Lake, I thought it'd be great to get into what's going on in the investment market space. What are people doing with their summer rentals and their summer homes? And how can people get into investments here at the Jersey Shore if they want to? Maybe we won't talk about interest rates, even though I just brought it up. That's going to kill everybody. But anyway, nice to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. And this is my first podcast, so I'm very excited to talk to you about all those interesting topics. And then, of course, try all the food, which, slightly more interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's a great topic, and the market's already popping here. I mean, it's an early spring market already. Despite the interest rates, the buyers don't seem to hesitate to move in and purchase properties. Right. A lot of what I'm seeing is second home versus, say, straight investment. Okay. But a lot of people in this market, Spring Lake, Belmar, a lot of people enter the market initially with what I call a hybrid second home investment. Okay. They may ultimately be looking to move down here in 5 to 10 years. So they want to secure a home that they really like for maybe a long-term primary residence, but oftentimes they initially purchase with the plan of using a couple weeks or a month or the summer and renting out the winter, or even renting the whole summer or individual weeks.
And we're not talking about Belmar animal houses. We're talking about...
No. I mean, typically people who are looking for their future primary residence aren't looking at animal houses, but, that is one way to create some income.
And owned a few of those in your time also.
I've never owned any animal houses, but my business started off in Belmar primarily working with seasonal landlords. And many of them were landlords by default back then. We're talking 2008, 2009. A lot of people bought beach homes towards the peak of the market, 2005, 2006, 2007, started using them with their families, whatever. And then kids got older, market tanked, and they became landlords by default. So many of them might have chosen to use the house for a week or two in the summer, and then we rented out, July, August for top dollar, some the whole summer. And many of those clients I worked with year after year, renting the houses out, and then most of them I sold. Right. And yes, in the earlier stages of my career, I handled what would be considered some of the animal houses, which is a big business in Belmar, Manasquan, and other areas too. But that's changed over the years. That market has really shrunk dramatically. Right. But no, what I'm talking about now are people that are mostly looking for second homes, or just high-end investments. If they're looking at a town like Spring Lake, if you notice, you wouldn't necessarily notice, but if you were to look up listings for summer rentals, you'll see a huge amount of listings in Spring Lake, Seagirt, Manasquan, and many of those are only up for 2 weeks or a month. So many
big dollars too. I mean, we're not talking small rental numbers. We're talking mortgage paying, covered half the year mortgage.
So I recently bought a house in Spring Lake that we've been living in for about 5 months, 6 months. That will become my, I don't want to say forever home because I bounce around, but it'll become my primary residence for my family ultimately. It's a 2-bedroom house, so we're going to expand it at some point. But I'm renting out this summer, and I've gotten $4,000 a week so far for 5 weeks. So my goal is to cover as much carrying costs as I can to get me through the season, and at some point within the next year and a half, I'll do an addition on the house, move back in permanently. Now, my neighbor, who has about a 2,000 square foot colonial renovated maybe 3 years ago, their house is up for $8,500 a week for 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
So they own another house out of state. They're going to go there or go on vacation. But a lot of people use the 2-week rental because there's a New Jersey exemption.
Okay.
That if you rent your primary residence for up to 15 days or 2 weeks, you aren't charged any sort of capital gains tax. So that's one of the reasons in Spring Lake, Seagirt, a lot of the affluent towns, you see people put up their own personal residences for a 2-week period.
Yeah, but I just don't want anybody living in my house.
Then that just wouldn't be for you. And there's a lot of people that feel the same way. But some people, set up their houses for a few years to be more like a vacation rental.
Right.
And they use this money to put themselves in a more comfortable position.
Right.
Some people don't care, or they have multiple homes, so it's easy. And many of these are second homes too. So, if you had a house in Bergen County, and a house in Spring Lake and a house in Florida, you have a lot of flexibility to.
Right. So Jason on my team rents his primary residence out every year for the whole month of July.
Sure.
In Monmouth Beach, he gets top dollar, which pays for him to travel with the family wherever they want to go, covers everything. So it works out really well for them, and they love doing it. It's just not something that I could personally get into. That's why I'm house poor.
Well,
I make
but
poor
you're
investments with
business
respect to
rich. House poor, business rich is a good
until
way
I
to be.
until I get the bill for lunch.
Well,
We're gonna have to work a little bit harder and sell some more houses and
Sure.
get some more referrals.
and sure, a couple more businesses.
So, getting into the investment market, right? So, with the high interest rates, what are people doing to offset some of that stuff, some of the higher interest rates going on? We're not seeing prices come down. So, how are investors getting into the market? Even if they are seasonal secondary, is it really just using that higher rental income to offset for those portions of rental periods?
It's a good question, and I don't have the perfect answer, but the interest rates are scaring off bottom tier investors.
Okay.
Beginner investors are having a lot harder time swallowing, their returns after paying a high interest rate on a 25% down investment property. Now you have to remember that this is a cash heavy market.
Okay.
Probably at this point, something like 25 to 30% of transactions are still all cash. Now, in the past, they would be all cash, and a lot of those buyers would refi soon after into a really low interest rate.
Right.
So I'm not sure what that impact will be long term in terms of the refi market, but I'm still seeing a good number of cash buyers, particularly on second homes, luxury properties, and investment properties. So as long as the unit or property makes the type of return that the investor is seeking,
Right.
if that can be had by buying with or without a mortgage, then the numbers work. It's typically a cash flow proposition. So if someone's
Everything's about cash flow.
right, so if someone's very flush and the money's just sitting in the bank, or they just sold a property and have to use it for a 1031 exchange or other investment avenue, then they're motivated to buy that property,
Right.
and they'll take whatever risks may be involved because they're actually saving a large amount on taxes. But really, most people have some sort of a model of a cap rate, a capitalization rate, which is a rate of return based on your initial investment and the value of the property.
Right.
So people will model and decide if it makes sense or not. In the height of the market, well, I guess we're at the height of the market, but let's say a year ago.
We don't know where the height of the market
Yeah.
is.
Well, a year ago when we were similarly priced, but with much lower interest rates, I was seeing buyers happily buying at 4.5% and 5% caps, which is much lower than historically average. When I got into the business, people were looking for 8 to 10%,
Right. Remember that.
which is very, very difficult to achieve from a realistic perspective. People use different models, like, hey, I put up 30,000 total and I make X amount per month. My rate is this, but a true cap rate is based on the actual purchase price of the property. Some people might add in any improvements they make,
Right.
and the actual rents or net operating expense. So, I think using my model, if someone were to purchase a property at 5.5% or 6% right now, they'd be doing pretty well. That does not factor in mortgage interest. So someone might be break even with a mortgage, but it still might make sense because you have someone paying for your asset.
If someone paying for the asset, and the hopes is that at some point in the next near future, the interest rates are going to go back down again. Refinancing opportunities are always there. I'm a big fan of refinancing opportunities.
Lots of hope in those interest rates coming down.
I mean, but you look at interest rates. I did a guest lecture last night at Monmouth University, and the class is an entrepreneurship class. And one of the things they were talking about was inflation. So you look at the inflationary chart over the last 40 years, and we're at a bit of a high point right now. Not where we were in the 70s, but we're from where we were the last 10 years.
Sure.
Inflation is wild, and we see it in everything that we do.
I mean, that's a great point, and that ties into the interest as well. I mean, if you think about the inflation and the values of houses still coming up despite the high interest rates, it's kind of part of the same puzzle. I mean, we can say that, I think they recently announced that year to year, last month, houses went up 8.5%. The year before it was probably 15 or 20. But if you factor in an 8.5% or higher inflation rate, you'd really consider that to be a flat number. So when we're talking about real numbers, it is going up. But in terms of inflation, maybe it was flat. And those things are all interesting factors that are tweaked by the powers that be with the government and the interest rates and the Fed. So
the more cash you have, the better off you're going to be is really what it comes down to. So
Absolutely.
The other type of investment that a lot of people look at is fix and flip, which I hate looking at flip houses because generally they suck. But there's definitely a market out there for things that need to be rehabbed. They need new roofs, new kitchens, new plumbing, new electrical, everything that goes into it. With the cost of construction, where are you seeing that in the marketplace right now?
What I would say is the businesses, whether they're an LLC or an individual person, but let's just call it the businesses that have been flipping homes consistently for the last 5 to 10 years, they're going to continue to do so and will probably be reasonably profitable. The biggest risk really is the idea that maybe they misspeculate or mispurchase or find things in the home that require more attention than they initially planned for. And that's where you can go upside down in a flip. But the larger companies that churn 2-3 houses a month, maybe 5 to 10 a year, they're somewhat insulated from a mistake here and there.
They have enough moving parts and enough cash flow in that. But it's how many people got hurt in 2008 when they were trying to flip houses and buying things for top dollar, and then things went belly up.
Sure.
So there's got to be a fear of that in the marketplace. There's no shortage of inventory, so that fear shouldn't be there, but it's got to be when you're looking into the fix and flip space.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've dabbled with personally over the years. I've done only like 1 or 2 flip projects where I actually sold the property. I've renovated many properties that I've owned and held them as rentals. But it's somewhere I've always been a little bit conservative and cautious with. I mean, really, the most important part of the flip is the purchase. So you have to buy right. If you don't buy right, it's not going to work, period. And then you have to have a steady, reliable source of labor. And the better the flipper, the better the investor, the more tuned in they are on the actual expenses so they can evaluate it from the start. And the closer that their evaluation is to the final product, the more likely they are to make the type of return that they want. So that's why I was suggesting that the more experienced flippers, I think, will continue, and I think that they'll do pretty well. I think it is a difficult time to just dabble in flipping. Because dabbling in anything is dangerous, because it means that you're not experienced.
Although I'm a big fan of people getting into their side hustles, I love having a side hustle. I'm guilty of having multiple side hustles over a period of time. Flipping houses as a side hustle is maybe a little bit more risky, but if you can do it and it's disposable income, then it's great.
If you have the cash, know the trades, or can handle at least one trade yourself, you could probably do it if you have the cash to get to the house. Obviously in any business, you have to really pick your professional. So if you own an insurance company, you need to have the right social media marketing person, the right photographer, the right salesperson. Similarly, if you're a contractor or just a house flipper, you need to trust your general contractor or line up all the trades. You need to have the right mason, electrician. You have to be reliable, trustworthy. You want to have a budget, a timeline. And those are things that are pretty complicated. It takes the right kind of person to, succeed there. So it's an opportunity, but not one anyone should take lightly.
I love it. I love passive income. I love all these opportunities. I love getting to learn from professionals like Jacob. You're 15 years in the business, right? 15 more.
Closer to 20, but yeah. But
closer to 20. I'm trying not to age him. But clearly he just did it himself. So that's all fine. But you're a true professional in what you do, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation.
Thank you.
Put it on video, but I'm getting hungry for lunch, and I think there's some great advice out there. We'll put Jacob's information and everything that we post across all of our social media platforms so that you can find them if you're interested in investing. Do your research, meet with the right people, and get educated and have a professional working with you to evaluate different opportunities, whether they're multifamilies, fix and flips, if you're going to live in it, renovate it, and then rent it, right? There's so many different ways.
The old long flip. That's how I got started.
Skin the cat, slice a cake.
Buy low, live in it for 2 years, fix it up, sell it, don't pay any taxes.
I mean, it's a great way to do it if you can do it. And, I tell people that are young and starting out that they should 100% be getting into the market in that type of fashion or moving into a multifamily and living in it. You did that as well, right?
Yeah. That's a great move.
Great way to build wealth.
Absolutely.
And now that the lights went out, I bid you adieu.
Thanks, Aaron.